Hey friends, welcome back. I am so grateful on this cold day. You can see all my gear on here to welcome Jyotish. I am just so grateful that it worked out for us to connect and looking forward to hearing more about your story. So, why don't we start off with you just telling us a little bit about what it feels like to be you on this planet right now?
Hmm. It's a vibe, at this point. It feels, pretty amazing. It's not that every day is amazing. We go through, these emotions that roll in that are hard to deal with and they roll on out and the new ones come in. But at this point, like it's been a journey and I'm really digging it a lot.
Amazing, amazing. So, something as you know that I get really curious about are those little moments where it feels like an alternative path opened up for people, and sort of like if there was all of a sudden a huge realization, or if there was just like slowly but surely things started to open up. Do you have something like that opened you up to not just being in the struggle in your life?
Yeah, well, I think that it started, early on is that, I had very extensive trauma from a young age, but I had this protective factor, which was my mom. And it wasn't that she was perfect, but, she held that light, you know.
Mm.
So she really gave me this great foundation, of these kind of very, hippie, esoteric type of practices that she engaged
Mm.
in, very clean eating, at a young age, and
Ooh,
so that was
excuse me.
kind of this foundation, so I would say that that would be, like, the first kind of, like, little spark of something, even though I didn't have the language for it then. And then fast forward, trauma evolves and kind of morphs into different things, and I really wasn't present. I mean, I was there experiencing life, but I was really leading in a lot of superficial ways. And so I would say that the next really big aha was, living out of my van, traveling, and then coming into like gatherings of people that kind of move about the United States. And that was my next, like, wow, there's a different way to live and people can love each other without any, you know, obligation to,
Hmm.
and that was big. And then still moving on through, I would say the biggest was Eckhart Tolle for me.
Okay. I
Yeah.
want to get to Eckhart Tolle, but let's go back a little bit. So I love what you said about your mom, sort of offering. It sounds like just like the possibility of, I don't know what you would call it, love or meaning,
Yeah.
maybe. What would you call like what she was showing you was possible?
Yeah. It was this like really like unconditional love for me. It was like no matter what I did, she saw me as, as a beautiful spirit.
Hmm.
She always showed up in that way, and even if it didn't go perfect at first, like she returned in that way. And so that was a safety net that I always had, even through,
Hmm.
later years where I, really did some wrong things to her and made some really bad choices. But she still kept showing up for me even when people told her not to.
Mm.
Didn't She followed her intuition, and it really carried me through some dark times.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it makes me think of how, like, not all of us have had the experience of having someone consistently in our life who offered that to us. But often when I'm talking with folks about like having a higher power or having a um, guardian angel or a higher self, that can be that sort of like, I will be here to remind you that there is something other than just the struggle. It sounds almost like she offered that to you.
Yeah. Yeah, she did. And still does,
Amazing.
And she's still, my mentor, and, we have
Wow,
weekly talks, and so she's a very, very special, person. And
that's
yeah,
amazing.
I
When
don't
you
think I would be here, if I didn't have that
mhm.
through there.
You mentioned how she stayed with you or stuck with you even when other people were telling her not to. Did you see or have you seen throughout your experience of her like ways in which she took care of herself that allowed her to be able to be present even when it was rocky with you?
I think that she had the foundation of taking care of herself that she started out when I was young, but I think that, through her own trauma and, and things started really unraveling, but even through, her own periods of kind of darkness within herself, she was still there. And,
Hmm.
and it may not have been, as present as, the younger years, but I always knew that no matter what, she would be there to support me. And so it was just kind of this, you know, not talked about knowing. And even
Mhm.
when other, families like tough love, like do and then she just knew me. She knew how my trauma showed up. She knew I was a runner. She knew I was really just trying to fill the void with whatever I could, to try to
Mhm.
mask pain. And she just understood that from her own trauma. And
Look,
she could
it
hold.
sounds like she allowed for it to not be working out
Mhm.
like
Right.
she allowed for you to be more unstable
Mm.
in a way that like it doesn't sound like she tried to fix it, but she was like, when you're wanting to check in, I'm here. Did it feel like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a period of, doing everything that she had in her control, like, here, let's go to therapy, let's try these things. She really did, a period, let's put you in a private Christian school, like trying the things that made sense to her at that time. But, the trauma responses were so extreme, that she just kept kind of catching me.
Mm.
And just, and I can't remember, her ever really getting angry.
Mm-hmm.
I put myself in danger. There was the mom that came out of like, but it still was just like you're loved,
Mm.
like just that behind the scenes of like, I might not agree with what you're doing, but you're loved. And that's something that if we don't have that, that's really hard when we don't have that person.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking as you were saying that, like, was there ever a confusion for you? Like, why am I loved if I'm not doing the right thing? Like, did that ever feel uncomfortable to you or did you push it away?
Yeah, I don't really think that I connected with any of that until much later in life. I think that, I started self-medicating so young, and that I really just, was just looking for, the masking. What can I mask with next? And or who, and I wasn't really in tune with, what my nervous system was feeling like, why I was feeling the way I was. I didn't even know the word trauma, at that time, and didn't understand, a lot of it. And I don't think that, my mom really understood to the level that we do now, a lot of it too, but she just had this very intuitive way, of just kind of, softening the fall.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Mhm.
And so then you said you were on the road. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, I just kind of checked out, and not in a good way, not in a glamorous way of like this, like off the grid fun. It wasn't. It was a lot. It had some beautiful parts, but it had a lot of sadness and a lot of addiction. And I got into some really heavy things. Um, and so the lifestyle wasn't really conducive, to like finding yourself or this, this great chapter. But when we came upon these gatherings, something shifted, of all of these kind of old deadheads and all of these people gathering, and they kind of travel around, um and I got to kind of break free from it for a moment and got to feel like there's something else out there, than this just kind of like, you gotta, do your stuff to get through the day. And,
Mhm.
and there was people laughing and having a good time. And, in
Mm.
the group that I was, with, were pretty hardcore in a lot of ways that, they were cased in a hardness. And these people were light and like, and so that was really special for me of seeing like, wow, like here's a group of people that are just like dancing and, I mean, they were probably on, maybe using things too, but it wasn't in the way that we were.
Okay, so it sounds like you were connected with a group of people and you were like living out of a van, is that right?
Yeah.
And traveling and using substances.
Mm.
And was there like a we're going towards something, or was it like this is how we can exist?
Yeah. It was a whole subculture, of like, people that they just lived on the streets, and we had a van, and there wasn't any direction other than where you just decided to go, um, and where your drug of choice was at. And then you get to
Okay.
the place for a while,
Just
just
getting to the drugs.
and
Okay.
just yeah, maintaining, and and then it not being to where you're not getting high, you're just getting well. And you're just getting the drug to get through the day. Just
Okay,
to
tell me a little bit more about that. I don't know what that means. You're not getting high, you're just getting
Well, it's heroin, and so with heroin, like, you to get to a point where it's not like you're not getting high. You're using it just like any other opiate so that the detox symptoms don't come on.
oh, so you're just like staving off
Right.
the it coming out of your system.
Right, so that you're not in full-blown body aches, turmoil,
Ah.
so you're just having to, like, use it just to get up and function throughout the day to get more money to then repeat, repeat, repeat,
I
repeat.
see. So I didn't know that about heroin. So when it comes out of your system, you feel sick.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to keep taking it in order to not feel sick. So then your whole life just is about getting it into your system.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So this
Yep.
was a couple of people who were on that journey with you, just trying to keep it in your system. Where could you get to get more in your system to
Right,
keep that sickness from coming on?
right.
Uh-huh. And then that intersected with this like hippie free love, like we don't need to be tied down by society subculture.
Exactly, yeah.
Fascinating.
And I just felt like a breath of fresh air there, and that's where I wanted to be, um,
So
but I
you were
was
able to notice it enough. You had the wherewithal to notice what they were experiencing.
yeah. Yeah, and I had a pretty, amazing experience of, using psychedelics, and I was symptom free from the heroin. And so
Oh,
no detox, no anything. And so I felt like I had been given this like second chance, but I mean, I
wow.
didn't have the like ability to stop at that point, but I realized, wow, like this just did something here.
Yeah, it interrupted it.
Yeah.
What tell me more about that experience. Like how did that come about? You were at one of these stops where you encountered this
Yeah.
group of people.
Mhm. Yeah, and there was this old timer standing welcoming everyone, and he just
Uh-huh.
put some LSD in my mouth as I walked up, and which, wasn't an uncommon thing for me to just accept whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but the group that I was with, they went off to their own camp area, which I wasn't really vibing with because again, it was like kind of dark, kind of against hippies. But there's many camps in this, in this like group. And I just walked the whole night and just experienced people playing music and, so many things. I didn't talk to anybody. And I walked the whole entire night. And when I like the next day, when it started wearing off, I just like felt completely free and had no symptoms and was like, I could stay here. Like I could say goodbye and I could stay here. But I didn't have the ability to do that at the time.
Yeah.
I ended up leaving, but
So, do you know, is this like a thing? Could people come off of heroin by using
I
a
have no
psychedelic?
I have no idea, but I would love to be, involved in some research, at some point, with, I'm very much into plant medicine helping, addictions such as meth or heroin or, or things like that. Or, I know that we're not there yet. I know that
Fascinating.
Colorado and Oregon are probably closer, than where I'm at. But in the future, when it's, I'm not into getting in trouble with the law anymore. So, but in the future, you know what I mean? If it's there's something that's legal that I can get involved in, you know, is that's definitely a path that I'm wanting to head in because it wasn't just that chapter that did so much for me. It was later.
Fascinating. Yeah. So this to me, this is a perfect like example of what I feel like is this there's something else besides us, like divine intervention. Because, all roads led to this old person putting LSD into your mouth,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
there was not like you being like, I'm done, I'm having a hard time, like I'm gonna go to a rehab or something. Like just like worlds converged and you received this momentary um break in
Yeah.
reality where you got to contemplate like,
Mhm.
oh, there is another possibility for me. And
Mhm.
it sounds like maybe you were like, how would I ever get off the heroin? Like, how would I get out of that cycle? And then you had this like blip out of the cycle
Mhm.
and a moment to say, like, oh my gosh, maybe I could. And to even have the thought, like, yeah, I could. And then what were those like hours like with it from that morning to like, oh, I could just stay here to like, I don't know if I can actually make this choice. Like, do you remember walking back up to your group and like how that went?
Yeah, I did. Um, yeah, in the front of the road that led up. I don't know if it was a mountain or not, but
Uh
um, and yeah, they're just kind of an angry group. And I knew that I didn't fit,
huh.
in love,
Yeah.
and so, I thought about it and was like, this is a choice. But at that point, I think I was so caught in a codependency and, and just kind of a trauma bond from, traumas that we had been through together um, and I'm probably a little scared,
Mhm.
is it was kind of out and I think it was Montana. I mean, I didn't even know like where we were, like what would I do with all the stuff in the van? Like who would I,
Right.
and, it was just a lot of like the logistics of like, I guess I really can't, stay here unless I like went and found somebody that was trustworthy to like, hey, can you take me in? And that felt a little awkward, you
Well,
know?
freedom also can be very intimidating when
Yes.
you've been, I don't want to say using, but I feel like there have been times in my life where I use the struggle to like create a container for myself. It's like, well, at least I know that these four walls of like who is hurting me is like
Yeah.
predictable and freedom sounded like way riskier. Did you tell anyone that morning about that experience?
No, no, they weren't the group to really talk about. In fact, when we like were pulling up to the place, like I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like heaven on earth. And they were just, really kind of
Mocking it.
mocking. Yeah, just really, just kind of gutter punk, like,
Yeah.
just, they were, I don't know, they have a camp in there that suits them. But for everybody else, it was really just peace, love, and and celebration. But
Yeah.
they were kind of, in that mindset, which, I didn't really understand, it at the time, I think. The huge difference
Fascinating.
of who I was
Yeah.
versus like who I was spending time with.
Yeah. So what year was that?
I mean, to say probably 2000 was 2000.
2000. Okay. So fast forward, you get back into the van. And
Yeah.
how much longer were you in the van?
Um, until 2003, I believe. And then I said goodbye. And
And what was that? Was that like another like, whoa, I'm ready, I realized something, or was that like a slow burn building?
I think it was like an act of desperation because I was gonna die.
Mm,
Like I knew it, and I knew that, you know, the bridges had been burned with the people that I was with. We had hurt each other in so many ways
mm,
that it wasn't repairable anymore.
mm-hmm.
We had left a road of destruction in our families' lives and everywhere that I knew that I had to get out. And that's where I ended up. I live like way in the upper peninsula of Michigan now. And that's my dad just happened to live up here, and me and him had a very estranged kind of relationship. And he took me in and I never left. And that was kind of the beginning of the like journey of really like becoming who I am today.
And what do you credit that like wherewithal to be able to say this is the end? Like, why didn't you let yourself die?
I think that, my mom, and like I didn't think that she would live if I didn't live.
Mm,
And I had I was pregnant in high school, so I had, a child that I didn't, that wasn't in my life anymore, but she was very important to me even though I didn't have contact anymore. And I just felt like that I was like worthy of something else.
wow. Was that always with you? Or
A little bit. Like there was a sprinkle in there that every once in a while it would come up. And I really think a lot of that was my mom again, was just
yeah.
feeding me that like you're good, you're worthy, you're beautiful. Like all of these things, even when I didn't believe it. So I felt like there was something in me that was like, no, like you have a purpose. There's something that you need to do here. And and I didn't know what that was. And I came, up just a mess, up here and trying to, get off, the hard drugs and, kind of went through chapters of, heavy alcoholism and then, just unwinding all of the trauma. And then a pivotal moment too was having my daughter like now. So, and that
Okay,
changed.
so she came back into your life.
Second daughter.
Oh, second daughter.
Mhm.
Okay. So you 3 years after the LSD moment, you had a like, I think I'm gonna save myself. You reached out to your dad and he was willing to take you in. And were you like in a rehab situation? Did you go to doctors to support you with coming off? Like, how did that part go?
Yeah. No, I had been to a lot of rehabs and it hadn't really worked out for me. And I don't think that it was really because they weren't doing something right. It was because I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And no, I got off heroin with vodka and
Huh.
I just really jumped from one drug to another. Now I know that that was like a harm reduction model.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just like, okay, let me lean in here, and that worked for a period of time. And then um I really just started piecing together like who am I, and I like realized, oh, I'm attracted to women. Like I kind of knew that, and ended up in my first like, lesbian relationship. And
Wow.
then I was like, oh wait, no, maybe I'm not. And then, pregnant Mary, so it was really like I was still in these heavy duty trauma responses. And but I was coming online a little bit more and more, as it was going along, but still
Yeah.
very
Yeah. So I think all of the time about how any little like any little openness that we have to letting ourselves be something that we think we're like not supposed to be is like one of the best things we can do for our own freedom, because it seems to have such a huge, like, taking out one card from a house of cards, like any of the tiniest gesture we can make towards like something that's not according to the rules. Was getting into that relationship with a woman something like that for you, you think?
Yeah, it was big. It was a fairly like healthy relationship too, not on my end, but on her end. And so she was a very amazing person, just completely understood that I was kind of a hot mess, and just took care of me. And, my dad ended up leaving and I moved in with this, kind of rugged biker family, and they just embraced me and just like took care of me. And, because I was maybe like, I don't know, 23 or 24, but I was really like 16,
Sure,
you know,
yeah.
stunted and very reckless. And they did the same thing in a different way that my mom did, was like they just would
Mm,
just like cushion the fall, like, okay, like you're safe, you're okay, and but I would just spiral, because I didn't have any coping skills at all to deal with
mhm,
I was having. And I was very hyper vigilant all the time because of, the chapters of like, what's your motive here? Like, what do
mhm.
having a really hard time in relationships, of trusting someone. And, so it was a lot of chaos that led to a great place.
Yeah, yeah. And because it sounds like even though it was a lot of chaos, it was like like you said, there was a little bit of a harm reduction. Like the chaos was getting a little bit like a better chaos, if that
Yeah,
feels
definitely.
right. Like it was like a little bit of a nicer version. Like you weren't with people who were, it sounds like, actively harming you in the way that you were maybe with your van crew. And then there was maybe the alcohol instead of the drugs. And it sounds like, um again, it sounds like you were really, I don't know if you're familiar with Bashar, who is an entity channeled by Daryl Inca. Anyways, Bashar defines abundance as you receive what you need to do what you need to do when you need to do it. And it sounds like there was like so many of those moments of like, okay, dad, you're gonna be here and be the nest for a little while. Okay, dad can't say like here comes biker crew. Like, and then maybe the next piece was you said marriage and pregnancy.
Yeah, and we tried our best. We kind of just like moved really fast, and he was military and got deployed a lot. And it just, we were young and we couldn't, but my daughter being born was like, it shifted everything for me. And it was the first, obviously I was just like, I'm pregnant, now I'm sober. And
Ah.
big for me because that wasn't in my really vocabulary for a really long time. And so it was huge. And then I realized, oh, like addiction can morph into other things, food, you know,
Mm,
caffeine, and I started kind of like really observing that, not so much with the knowledge that I have now, but a little bit at a time. And, when that relationship ended, I just, kept starting having these long-term relationships that really were amazingly toxic because they really gave me back every single thing I was putting out. And I was
mm,
toxicity in, with my first girlfriend and through all these chapters. And it was just like my eyes got opened and I was seeing like, wow, this is a reflection of me. All of this, like, abuse coming at me and destruction. This is what I've been doing.
mm,
And that's about when my mom introduced me to Eckhart Tolle and I read A New Earth, and it just like kind of, it shifted something
mhm,
at that point, and then it was just like repeating numbers and synchronicity, just like opened up this kind of whole like, wow. And the whole time I had been in college, through after when my daughter was born, shortly after, maybe she was like 4, I knew I needed to do something. I didn't really quite know what. And I never thought I would be accepted into college. I was a high school dropout. I had to get my GED. It's a whole, process, but I was just like, I'm going to do something. And at that time, I still had the conditioning of college means, that you're doing something, which now I know that I was just trying to really prove,
Like
like
legitimate your life. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I need something that says I'm worthy. And so
Hmm.
I kept diving into like, I don't know what this is, but then, had some great professors that said some great things to me. And I was like, whoa, like they think I can do this? Like, and that's when I went into social work. And, I felt like that fit. And I also looked at all these people that were social workers and I was like, they must have it all figured out. Like they must have their lives must be perfect. Like they probably just like meditate all day and like they're just, it was really my, I thought like that's going to be it. And I worked really hard, on getting all the way through bachelor's, master's, and then I realized I'm missing something though, because I didn't heal with all of these modalities. Like I didn't heal this way. I healed with this really weird
Yeah.
esoteric, and so
Yeah.
at the same time I started doing all of these like, holistic certifications and was like diving into like this other thing at the same time and then started working in the field, realized that, we're all alike even after you graduate. I mean, everyone has, their own story and their own things that they deal with. And it wasn't what I expected, but it was
Ah,
big growing up.
wow. Wow. So going back to your mom giving you that book, so was it before that moment that you started realizing that the toxicity that you were experiencing was reflecting back to you what you had been putting out, or did the book help you to realize that?
Helped me. Yeah. And it was not just the book. It was like that my mom, you know, she was, she would repeat things to me that I didn't really understand. And I would kind of sometimes scoff, like whatever, mom. But she'd just kind of like plant little seeds, and I think she could see that I was, in, a pretty toxic type of, environment and really drawing to me people that were not well themselves, it was,
Mhm.
they were traumatized and living out their own trauma responses. Yeah. And so, but yeah, it shifted with Eckhart Tolle and then, it was Miguel Ruiz, like the Four Agreements. And then it just like, it kept snowballing into like, these, are my friends, like the,
Mm.
and so,
Can I ask you more about that? Because I was just talking yesterday with someone who was asking about the co-regulation that we know is a part of like a healthy functioning nervous system. But when we don't have a healthy functioning nervous system, we can't connect with other people in a healthy way. So I love that you just said those authors were your friends, because I often am connecting with people who are in that, like, okay, I recognize that my old system was not healthy and all of the people I have connection with reflect that old system, but I don't know how to just like I can't make them all change and come on this train with me. But if I just leave, then I'm going to be all alone. And then a lot of us in that like early awakening are like so alone and we're like, but I don't have any friends and what's going on and this is so hard to do by myself. And I often say like books will be your friends, authors will be your friends, like podcasters will be your friends, like stuffed animals and pets and cozy blankets and cups of tea will be your friends, because there's a big like chunk of time when you're rewiring where you don't know how to find people who are going to connect and they're not going to connect with you yet. So yeah, say more about that, like the books were your friends time period.
yeah, well, after I read that book, my relationship of, I think it was maybe we're together for 7 years ended
Mm,
in a really, harsh way, and it really, I had to shift, because it was a huge breakup with kids involved and, a lot of stuff.
mhm.
when me and her split up, I tried to kind of go back to, these old coping skills of like, okay, go to the bar. Like, what do you do here? And it worked, but I had changed. There was something in me that had
Yeah.
it really wasn't like once that shifts, you can't go back because it's not the same anymore, even if you try.
You're like, I kind of know that this is not working.
Yeah. And then, I started a relationship with, my best friend um and we didn't know. I mean, we've been together off and on now for I think 9 years. I'm not sure, but and we just really started kind of growing and evolving together. And it started off of, trying to like mask again and that not really working and then finding, our people. And then that's where we kind of she introduced me to like festivals, which had the same vibe as what I had looked for before, but in a different way. And that really like gave us an opportunity to like, okay, we grind, we work, we do the thing, and then we go to this festival. And, I met some amazingly beautiful people that, um, had the same like just love.
Mm,
That was a really pivotal time. And then I just kept reading, and I just kept like taking in the information, got really into Ram Dass and still am.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and just like really wanted to absorb it and then really wanted to give it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were on this like parallel track of doing like a lot of the more spiritual, non-traditional, but then you were in the like college track of learning all the traditional methods and the DBT and the EMDR and the, cognitive behavioral therapy and all that good stuff. And so was there like a dissonance there for you of feeling like, okay, you're telling me this is the path that I am going to be like taking people down to get them healthy, but I didn't take that path and I'm living in my weekends with this whole world that is not taking that path. Like, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, it was harsh to try, two different, two different,
Yeah.
but I really had a blessed experience of working at a community mental health for a period of time. And while I needed to leave because it wasn't healthy for me, I got to see that traditional mental health works for some people.
Uh-huh.
I see it up close and personal and that there's a place for it. And even though I may not have gone down that road, I saw that that's somebody else's road and that
Mm-hmm.
too. And so I always try to keep that in mind of what I learned there. And even though, when I in my own treatment with people, I dip in and out of, holistic and traditional. And that's, if someone's wanting to work with me, they have that vibe, but that was a good experience for me to really see just traditional mental health. I grew up a lot. I healed a lot through that. And then I
Yeah.
set myself free.
Yeah, very cool. So you finished up your schooling and were you kind of still trying to do this traditional work life thing and just trying to do the other on top of on the weekends in your own time? And when did you finally have to sort of let that go?
Yeah, as soon as I graduated with my master's, I don't think it was long after that I said goodbye to, working in traditional mental health. And I worked for an amazing lady that she trusted me to work for her agency, and she was just really open and loving. And she knew I was just going to be there short term as soon as I got my clinical hours in. And then I opened my own practice, right away. And not sure what that's going to unfold into, but excited to see.
Okay, so that's a recent chapter in your life.
January, yeah.
Oh my gosh, so recent.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so yeah, you keep taking steps to like open up more and more and trust in this there's a way for everyone and that this is your way. So I'm curious, it sounds like you didn't use some of the traditional paths for your own, like creating your own serenity. What are some of the tools that you didn't have before that you've picked up along the way that you still use on like a daily basis?
Oh, I use so much. I mean, for me to stay healthy, I have to be really engaged in practices, so
I joke that my mental health is my part-time job. I spend at least
yeah,
20 hours a week on it.
yeah, yeah, it's I have to have practices for the mind. So there's, meditation, reading, podcasts, mindfulness, lots of that. I also need to move my body, which that was a more recent discovery, with the somatic healing and like realizing, oh, this actually really does
I
something here.
actually have to do something about this animal.
Yeah. Yeah. And movement piece with yoga and trying to like have a certain amount of movement during the day. And then my belief system, is like really tapping into, a lot of Eastern philosophy that I'm into, but um is those friends that I met in those books, is that
Mm.
reread certain books every year. Every year it's like, I'm glad that I did that. I needed that again. And I just keep taking in more and more. Bashar, a new one.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, so that like study mixed with some movement, mixed with some mindfulness, and that is like, are there times where you're like, ugh, I don't want to do it, I'm tired of it, and what do you do for yourself in those times?
Oh yeah, all the time. Is that this isn't like self-care, it's like a lifestyle, and I have a very rebellious part in me, that
I'm sure that part did not go away after all those years living wild and free on the road.
it did not go away. And so, every day I have to choose this.
Hmm.
And not every day is perfect, but I know that if I get to a certain amount of days, like I'm gonna start seeing certain responses come out of me that I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
taking care
Hmm.
of myself. And so it's very important that I keep up on it. And more important is just that I keep passing along, the information. And it's that like I take it in, I share, I take it in, I share. Because when
Hmm.
I share, I'm like,
Oh,
yeah, learning myself and then getting to help others, which is, I mean, the fact that I'm doing that is just my,
isn't it so mind blowing? I often am like, how am I contributing? Like, I was the problem for that was my only identity for so
yeah,
long. How
yeah,
can I'm like actually doing something positive? What?
yeah,
Ugh,
yeah.
ugh.
And I have an amazing wife, and she like, we really just keep trying to evolve together. And, we both have trauma, but it can be rocky, but we keep at it. We can see
Hmm.
the picture of like, we're going to be the elders here, not that
Yeah,
long.
yeah.
And that comes with, a lot of knowledge that needs to be passed down from what we
Hmm.
through this journey.
Hmm. Hmm. I often myself and hear so many others struggle with this like resentment of how challenging it is for some of us. Those of us who are like, yeah, it's a lifestyle. Like, I would be in a ditch if I was not doing this much work every day. Like, does that resentment or it's not fair come up for you? Did it at any point? How did you work with that?
I think that I'm really blessed that that doesn't come up for me. It's more like I guess again I'd have to say my mom really helps with that because she's like, we get to, not have to. So she's like really like a reframe. She helps with that a lot. No, I mean, I know that I have to show up and do a lot of things so that I don't return because I don't ever want to take that for granted. I'm just like healed now. No, like I need to keep doing the work. But yeah, I don't have any animosity towards it. Just a lot of gratitude that I'm even sitting here talking right now because, I definitely protected.
Yeah, yeah. There was a reason why you're still here, because there were certainly many of opportunities, it sounds like, to not be here.
Oh, so many.
Um, and the piece around, that was, when was, you said that was 2000, that moment when you had the sort of glimmer of like, oh, maybe something else is on this planet, to, here we are 24 years later. It's not weird to say that 2000 was 24 years ago. It's like, still feels like 2000 was like just the other day. But um but yeah, is there like, how do you interact with, or do you have any feelings of like, gosh, it took so long, or like, why couldn't I have figured it out sooner?
Yeah, I'm just, again, I'm blessed because I would not give up any of my I mean, I do like want to say that with a side note of like really do, feel for those who got hurt along the way, and that I wouldn't I don't want their hurt to be present, but I don't know if I wouldn't have gone through all of those chapters if I would be who I am today. And yeah, so I mean, I don't have any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I feel just like blessed and I'm still here. I'm like, wow, my avatar like is working really well for like all the that I've been
Considering.
through. Oh yeah, and I was really blessed that there wasn't more complications with that. And I have an amazing job. I have such great friends and a wife that's very supportive of me, family. My daughter is just, and her boyfriend just great. So I mean, I have all of these just amazing things in my life that I'm okay that it took this long because I don't think that I could have appreciated them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And you said, it sounds like the piece around the people who were hurt along the way. How do you support yourself when those thoughts come up?
Yeah, that good old shame. It's like a thick blanket that comes in. Yeah. That takes a lot of work. Sometimes, sometimes it comes in like pretty thick, but I've done a lot of work on that, through just the practices that I have. And I know that, I had a trauma story, everyone else has have a trauma story, and I know that I'm the villain in some people's story. And that's hard to know, but people were the villain in my story too. And, I try to remind myself that like good people make really bad choices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wasn't malicious. I wasn't, it was just reckless and traumatized. And I have to just keep, bringing that to me, just that forgiveness. So, because if I get stuck in that shame, there we go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a lot of radical acceptance and acknowledging that, that is a part of the story.
Yeah,
Uh, just sort of bottom line.
it is.
I
Yeah.
love in DBT, the way they define radical acceptance is one thing led to another thing, led to another thing. And like, if you look at all the things, it's very hard to imagine it working out differently. So you can start to admit it really couldn't have worked out differently. Like, a lot of trauma plus a lot of drugs would mean, I mean, it's hard to imagine a possibility of that not ending up in a lot of people being harmed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And just the state of mind that I was in. Like there was, yeah, just the perfect storm rolled in for, for quite a period of time. And it tries to brew up every once in a while, but
I can imagine.
we just, it's just it's those cliches, one day at a time, really being mindful of who your friends are.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you have those moments of it, that part of you coming and knocking at your door and saying, "Hey, let's go into a pit of shame for a while." Do you reach out to other people and let them know that's happening for you? Or what are some of the things that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I have, my wife is a great listener for it. But it really is though, a lot of it is the books again. Like I just like okay, what book do I need to go into? Because it's like, with Eckhart Tolle, it's like your pain body, is like, okay, let me look through
Mm,
that lens. And then like Ram Dass, it's like he has his own way of describing, like the experiences that we have. And then, with the four agreements from Miguel Ruiz, it's like not taking things personal, like
mm,
showing up the best that
mm,
you can. So it's like when I lean into those, it like breaks that free.
mm.
And so that's kind of really my go-to. And then of course, like talking with my mom weekly.
Ah, I'm so glad that you have all of those supports and that you know how to reach for them and that you've created a world where they're readily available for you. Well, what a journey. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your story today. I'm really grateful. And it's another, just another example. I feel like doing this podcast has shown me that there's just endless examples of people who can come up with a life that has a lot of meaning, that's really worth living, really no matter what has happened. So thank you for sharing so much about your journey. And where can people get in touch with you? What do you want to tell people about the work that you do?
I think the easiest place, I mean, it's kind of evolving right now. So probably Instagram, it's at Jyotish Amara, JYOTISHAMARA. That has links to my website.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how everything's, kind of evolving. Podcast coming soon, book coming, soon. Not a book about my life, but like just books of, different ways of finding your own healing. So I'm just
Great.
piecing, yeah.
So exciting to be with you at the beginning of this chapter. See what's coming next. I'll put your that Instagram and your website in the description so people can find you. And you work one-on-one with people right now. You're available for that.
Yeah, so I do therapy in Michigan, and then I'm also like through the ICF like a coach.
Okay.
So I do coaching throughout United States. That's more I would say more holistic spiritual kind of coaching that I'm not so much regular life coaching, but yeah, and I'm not typically accepting new people right now, but have a wait list.
Okay. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Hang on one second. I'll go ahead and end the recording and then we'll
Yeah.